Hi everybody. Thanks very much for attending. I think it's one of the last sessions of today. I hope it's been a good show for you. My name's Jackie Smith. I'm welcoming you to this session talking about sensory care environments and what we mean by that. I'm going to let the team introduce themselves because they'll do it a lot better than I will. But I'll start off with me. I'm an interior designer. I've worked in care and retirement living for about 15 years now. I also have a visual impairment. I'm blind in my left eye as of 12 years ago, so I have real personal and learned experience of what it's like to navigate challenging environments. Pritesh.
Hi everyone, my name's Pritesh Nathwani. I'm the director-owner here at Symphony Hearing. I've been in healthcare myself for about 15-20 years now, and we provide dedicated domiciliary hearing services to the care and retirement sector.
Hi, my name is Peter Kerr. I'm a director at Tilly 10. I have 30 years experience in design engineering. I'm also a BCO judge. I'm the BCO Scotland chairman, and I'm also an associate with the Dementia Service Development Centre in Stirling, and also a member of the Scottish Property Federation Sustainability Committee. So lots of things to talk about.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. My name is Jonathan Stainsby. I work for Panas Fabrics. I'm the head of their healthcare division. Worked there for 17 years. Proud to say I'm involved in the selling of the fabric and making sure that we are supplying the right fabrics to the right environment. So keen to be here.
Great, thank you everyone. As I was coming up the motorway this morning with my husband, I was talking about this session and where I was going to be presenting it. And I thought it was quite apt, given that where I'm sat right now is sensory really uncomfortable. So I've got lights in the distance. I think you can hear me, but I'm not sure. Lots of you are smiling, so thank you for that. And also, it's just, the acoustics are really bad as well. So because my sight's really bad, my hearing is really good. So I hear everything. So when I saw where we were presenting, I just had a bit of a panic, but I thought actually this is a really good segue into what we're talking about. Because as we age, even if you don't have a visual impairment, all our senses decline. And some people, whilst dementia is an inevitability of old age, cognition issues also obviously are very prevalent. So we have a role to play in terms of designing spaces that support people from a sensory and cognitive perspective. And so when we're talking about sensory environments, I think we're talking about environments that support people. They don't have to be sensory rooms, but I think every single room we design, we have to think about the senses. So I'm going to ask the panel now to do a lot more talking than me. I'm going to start with Peter. What do we mean by sensory environment?
I think for me, the main thing is I suppose there's two things. There's ones that are stimulation, right, which is the textures, the sounds and things, and a positive stimulation. Then there's the negative side of things that we don't want to see, things that glare, with shadows, bad acoustics and things like that. These are the main things that we mean by these sensory environments, and then how we approach it as designers, from my perspective, and how we deal with those challenges is really important. And we do quite a lot of talks as part of our business in terms of explaining that to our clients and hopefully making the spaces better for people to experience and deal with different challenges, because every space has got different challenges. Roof lights, kind of big glary objects at times. These kinds of things are really important to look at within spaces.
Yeah, and I think your slide behind you, when we had a pre-chat on Zoom back in the beginning of the month, or last month, Peter shared with us this slide, and I just thought, I love that, because a lot of it I think about in my design job, but there's so much more there that you don't really think about, and I thought that sums it up perfectly. So we've not got Death by PowerPoint today, we've literally just got that slide, because it supports all that we're going to be talking about. Pritesh, did you want to add anything about sensory environments? We're going to come on to acoustics in particular in a minute, but is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think you've answered the main point about the acoustics for us on the main side and the negative decline on that and how important it actually is, but many aren't actually seeing the benefits from it and having it in place instead of just having a sensory type room, but it's not actually what it should be.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to go through every single one of these points, but we're going to talk mainly about sight, touch, and also sound. So starting off with sight, as we age, even, as I said before, even if we don't have an age-related sight condition, just being older means that eyes are aging. Like all the other muscles in our body, the muscles in our eyes change as well, and so they're slower. And I think we've all been in situations where you've been outside in the garden on a really bright sunny day, and you come in to get a glass of water from the kitchen. It's like, whoa, it's really dark in here. Now that's something that, children, they bounce in and out the whole time because their pupils are responding really quickly, whereas as we get older, our pupils are a little lazier. And so that's what's happening. That's just one example of how our sight changes. And also our lens is yellow, so we see colours differently. I had a cataract operation about 8 years ago, and I came in my good eye, and I came around from the operation, and it was like, wow, everything's so colourful. And that's probably how I saw colour when I was 5, 6, 10 years old. And so I think we get used to a greyer world. So we need to think about when we're designing spaces to make sure we're using plenty of tonal contrast so people can navigate and feel confident in their own environment. But also don't be afraid to use colour. And I think, Peter, light obviously, plays a really important role. I think I read somewhere the average 85-year-old needs 3 times the amount of light hitting their retina than the average 18-year-old. That really gives you a sense of how important light is. Over to our lighting expert.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects to light.
No. Ah.
Now, oh.
If I speak louder, can everyone hear me?
Slight technical hitch.
Hello?
Oh, it's always a nightmare when the tech doesn't work, isn't it? It's my biggest nightmare.
Let's try and speak loudly. So, lighting, with respect to what you're mentioning there, macular degeneration is probably something that we're familiar with when you get older. Now, what we really need to look at with respect to lighting is the quality and intensity of light in spaces.
Perfect.
Hello? No? Hello? Right, back now.
Yep, you
Okay,
are.
I'll start again. So, just going on to what you were saying, Jackie, there. I mean, one of the main things that we were talking about, really, things like macular degeneration, so the ageing eye, it's something obviously we all go through and we change. I mean, even this year I was looking at things, I could see things differently, not as well as I used to as I get older. But colour is also a really important thing. So that actually, when you're younger, you see things more vibrantly. When you get older, things become greyer. And we need to really, look at our environments, interiors, and how we design things, especially the likes of artificial lighting. We have a thing called the CRI, the Carbon Colour Rendering Index, keeping that high as possible in environments where we have an ageing population and ageing spaces. And what we really need to do is make sure that colour quality of anything, any of the objects, and actually more importantly the food that people eat. You imagine trying to eat some meat or something like that, for any of those meat eaters out there. The reds, right, you imagine looking at that when you get older and it looks a little bit blue, it looks a little bit grey, it's not very appetising, people won't eat it and we need to eat. So these kinds of things are really important when we're looking at light as well, Getting outside is really important as well, having spaces where you've got care homes, getting outside is really important, getting connectivity to the sun. Again, from light perspective, it's not just about the artificial lights, it's about the sunlight, getting the UV content, that's great for osteoporosis and things like that, getting the vitamin D in your body, making those bones stronger, and also getting access to the infrared component of light as well. Infrared light is really important in your body. It helps with things like glucose control, and actually it just makes you feel better. Infrared light is really important for you as well. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the key components of a whole hour-and-a-half presentation on it. I won't talk because we'll at 30 minutes, but yeah, these are some of the key important elements associated with light, that intensity, uniformity as well in the spaces, avoiding shadows, avoiding when you're designing windows. Make sure when you're putting windows in and you've got it in the south-facing elevation, maybe intersperse it with some artificial lights because you get the shadows cast across corridors and spaces. These are all big challenges for people with, eye challenges and sight challenges. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly been many occasions when I've kind of solved one problem design-wise and then created another one. And we were looking at we were doing a project for young epilepsy, and then the client was saying we can't have any window treatments where the residents can grab them, or anti-ligature issues. We had also sort of safety issues we had to think about as well. And so then one of the girls in the team, the care team, said, we could have those cassette blinds, so like it's a Venetian blind within the window. And everyone's going, yeah, that would be really good because it would, tamper-proof and everything. And then I said, but then when the light comes through, you're then going to cast stripes on the floor, and then stripes might actually stimulate a seizure. I was like, oh yeah. So it's often that the case, isn't it? So the next thing to talk about is definitely hearing. Now, care environments by their nature can be very noisy spaces, and I think as we age, it's about maximising the good sound and minimising the noise, and that comes, from the design. When the architect starts looking at the plans and thinking about where the lift's going and so forth, and where the kitchen is in relation to the dining room, and trying to minimise all that sound. But this man here has a lot more to say about that than I do. So tell us a bit more about what you feel can be done in care environments to help that.
Especially within the care environments, and majority of the new care homes that are being built at the moment are quite open plan, and the racket from that comes from the coffee machines, the kitchen, and you've got to remember elderly people do struggle with this, and what we tend to find is, as a tick box exercise, a loop system may be put in, it may not be put in, but at the same time individuals are then declining from coming to social gatherings, activities, well-being coordinators should know very much about this in person, where certain individuals will stop coming down to this, because what happens is they can't enjoy being part of the care home, and also the residents and the networking, the socializing that should be part of their care. And what they end up doing is isolating themselves, which is then going to go decline more and more, and which is the first sign of depression. And this is a big challenge that we found across the board, where minimum measures are being put into place into the care and retirement sector, purely for the fact that the answer that many have come back with is buying a loud PA system. But again, that's not the answer, purely for the fact that you don't need loudness. It comes down to clarity, and I think there's a big difference, and many people aren't very knowledgeable on the difference between clarity and loudness. And it's hard, because if they don't have a hearing loss or some sort of hearing deficiency of some sort, naturally they just stop coming because they can't handle the noise from it. Quite upsetting to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've heard stories of residents just avoiding certain areas in care homes, staying in their rooms. And one extreme example was a lady, because she didn't get out a lot from her room, she ended up being wheelchair bound. And that's all because the environment was just too much. And it is heartbreaking, actually.
I think managers also struggle as well to get key important information across, having to repeat themselves. And there are solutions out there. It's just finding and making sure that you're speaking to the right people when designing this. And I think it comes from a upper level at head office and things like that, where they just think it is, again, just a tick box exercise. But a hearing loop or hearing needs are just as important as the fire alarm is to us. And many people sort of forget that, and then it has a negative decline on overall atmosphere within the care settings.
I'm even looking at my father now. He's 80 in the next couple of weeks, and he's sort of always been 60 in my view, because he's sort of vibrant and sporty and all that kind of stuff, and he's really started to decline, where his hearing's declined. And I'll just see him sitting at family lunches, and he just sits back because it's just too noisy, and he's not taking part in the conversation, and that's a real shame. So yeah, it's very important we get these right. As I said, we're not going to work around every single one here, but another thing we really need to talk about is touch, and how touch changes. Touch is important, obviously, in sensory environments, but also as we age, our skin thins and we bruise more easily, and what we've got our arms on, what we're sitting on, is much, much more important, and we're less resilient than we used to be when we were younger. We did a project a couple of years ago where the... Sorry, got distracted there, you see? Distraction, overwhelm, that's exactly what I'm talking about. A couple of years ago for blind veterans.
Yeah, he's done a close.
And so texture and touch was very, very important to them. So we ordered up from Panaz some large samples of fabric so we could take them when we were doing the presentation. And they were basically draping the fabrics over the arms of the chairs, and then taking their arms, and this lady was just going, yeah, that's fine, that's good. I can see myself sitting here comfortably with that kind of fabric, because they really were road testing it. So that really made me think, gosh, it really is important to think about the textures that we're using in environments. But again, I have an expert over there that's going to tell you much more about it. So, Jonathan,
thank you very
more.
much. Yeah, I suppose my message today is to endorse what you've just said, really, in the fact that no two fabrics are the same, and we're all here in the care sector looking at these beautiful designs, beautiful fabrics, and they can look amazing, but we need to make sure that you're specifying the right fabric, using the right fabric for the right environment, certainly for the aged skin. So I'm trying to endorse the fact that the selection of the texture is important as the look of the design and the colour. Certainly when there are fabrics available now with the technology of being stain resistant, having piles on them instead of a flat fabric, that will allow aged skin to touch it, to be rubbed against it without causing bruising. And a lot of the fabrics that are available, again, if you choose the right ones, that can also be breathable. And if they're breathable, it does prevent people from getting sweaty, which is another aid for every chair, never mind a chair in a care home. So the technology is available if you know what you're looking for within that textured choice. Pileable fabrics tend to be softer. Flat fabrics can carry design and colour better because you get a clearer stamp of the colour and the design on them. But the flatter the fabric can be more coarse against the skin. So yes, more information is available, but there is greater choice in the texture to get the texture right with the look and the colour. And that's something that we as a company want to provide you as our customers, as interested parties in it, to make sure that the choice and the technology is available to get the right use of the right fabric in the right environment.
Yeah, we've had, thank you, we've had examples as well where when we presented fabrics to the clients, we've had a group of residents who have been part of that presentation. And I think, you know, if it's controlled properly, I think it could be really positive. I personally, I think it's really important actually that, you know, people using this space are going to touch the fabrics. And so we put them on key rings. So we'll do our design balls, but we'll also order up fabrics and put them on key rings. And so first of all, we have the opportunity for residents to touch it and say, oh, I really like that. And actually, you can see sometimes there's a mood change, and when they're touching something soft, it's comforting. We all like soft things, don't we? It's comfort. But also it gives a certain agency to some of the residents. Well, I had a part in that. So that's quite a good, not that you asked for a tip, but that's something that I do because it really sort of what makes the point about the soft fabrics, but also gives people choice. Okay, so did you have anything else to add, or do you feel you've covered?
I think that's the nature of the choice, really. It's understanding and thinking that no two fabrics are the same, and it is the combination of colour, design, texture, and thinking where is the chair going to be used, in what environment, who is going to be sitting on it and using it, bearing in mind that in that choice you need to also be aware of how it needs to be cleaned within a care environment. So those, again, textures, the choice of texture can make a difference on what you may want from it, what the users of the chair may want to get from their experience of sitting on the chair, as well as your information as to how to maintain it. And that information is available, but it is a choice, not a right and a wrong, to get the combination right.
And one thing I've had pushback from on some clients, and I've been able to reassure them on this, but is, you know, they look at a boucle or sort of a more textured fabric and then they're concerned about infection control. But I know that Panaz fabrics have a lot to offer there, don't they?
We do, yeah. Antimicrobial fabrics are certainly a core of what we do to provide peace of mind for you, the care operators, to make sure that if you are trying to battle infections, then the fabric is doing some of that. Excuse me, seems to be having a technical issue. That the fabric can take some of that strain away from you. It's peace of mind to know that a fabric can be treated to be antimicrobial, that those then bugs, for want of a better word, who may land on it, can be killed instantly and not passed around a room, a care home, and making it safer for everybody that's using that building to think that there is a system in place, a protocol in place to make sure that infection is brought to a minimum. So yeah, that choice of antimicrobial, the choice of texture and colour and design is all part of what we encourage our customers to be aware of in that choice, to come to the right decision for the right selection.
Brilliant, thank you. When it comes to sensory environments from a design perspective, I've started, we had a client recently that asked for a sensory room, and I just asked them, I turned it on its head and I said, what are you trying to achieve? What's your outcome? What are you looking for in the response of your residents? And I want to feel calm, I want them to feel supported. I want them to, but also not just be in a completely soulless room. And so we've started in certain projects where we've got the space, we've used one of the quiet lounges as it's also a reminiscence lounge. So I'm not talking about Vera Lynn and things like that, but it's, we've designed it with recycled Urquhart furniture. We've used actually the folklore collection from Panaz, which is very like the kind of Sanderson stuff that I grew up with in the 70s. And then I love this bit, it's very nerdy, but I go onto eBay and I find old TV times from the 1970s. It's amazing what you can get on eBay actually, loads of stuff, loads of old reminiscence items. And so we've got those in the TV rack and the magazine rack, and then on the shelves I go to charity shops and I buy things that you would expect to see on shelves back in the 70s. And so some things my mum's still got in her dining room, so but that as a sensory room to me was another interpretation of it. And I think we really, lots of soft fabrics in there. Acoustically we had curtains, so it's dampening the noise, carpet, so that's going to maximize the good sound, minimize the noise. And everyone loves that room. And in fact, the operations director said it's a 66-bed care home with loads of communal spaces, and that quiet lounge on the second floor is her favourite space. And I thought, yay, because that to me is a sensory space. Right, well, we're going to now move on to the last bit of the presentation, and we're just going to talk about our top tips. So if you're going to walk away today with oh, that's great, I really learned that's something I can do. So I'm going to start with Pritesh. So your top tips.
I think my key top tip is there is support out there for acoustics. It's just making sure that you speak to the right people. I'm more than happy to speak to anyone after my talk today. But the key thing, my top tip is there is solutions out there more than just a standard PA system that will just provide loudness.
Peter. Do we come to Jonathan next whilst you're...
Can do, yes, because it just goes back to what I was saying, really.
And then we'll come back to you, Peter, I promise.
I would encourage everybody to take a keen interest in who is going to be using the furniture, how it's going to be maintained, and making sure that when you're choosing the fabric, yes, we all want to make sure, as we said earlier, that the look and the design is what you want, but the texture, to make sure that the patient experience is as good as it can be, because the technology is now available to have almost what you want visually and almost what you want texturally, and that combination is quite powerful when you get it right. So try and understand the brief and then talk to your fabric provider about what you want from that fabric.
Brilliant, thank you. Peter.
Would you like to borrow mine?
Am I discharging all the battery? That was really funny, by the way. I just can't hear it.
I did, it was funny.
Hello. Right.
Hang on.
Feel like a pop singer now.
There we go.
So, where was it? What was the question?
Your top tip, or top 3 tips.
Yeah,
Top
so,
tips, yeah.
So building typology, I'm just trying to think, care homes, right, so top tips in care homes. When you're designing the building, the lighting strategy, make sure you look at a day strategy and a night strategy, right? So what that means is bright light during the day, right? So make sure, and even in uniform light throughout the spaces. At night, allow that light to reduce down. Warmer white light is good because we want melatonin to be produced and allow sleep to occur naturally. Also avoid lights right adjacent doors and corridors that would cause light underspill into the bedrooms. Don't leave ensuite lights on, right? Because what will happen is that that will encourage people to get up in the middle of the night and go to the ensuite toilet because melatonin suppresses bowel movements. All right, so there's loads of other tips, but if you want to talk to me, I'll be maybe here for a wee bit.
Brilliant. I think it's worth, when we're talking about sensory environments, we're talking about the people working in those environments as well. And when we were talking about lighting earlier on, we've been to some schemes where the lighting is too bright in some situations, but then really quite dark in the medical cupboard where people are administering drugs, and you should really have good light in there. So and also one of my pet peeves actually is going around and seeing the bulbs have been changed but not replaced with the same bulb, so you've just got different colour temperatures. You've probably seen this everywhere. So yeah, it's a nightmare. But my top tip, I guess the most important thing to support people living in care homes, as far as I'm concerned, is tonal contrast. And people often hear the word tonal contrast or colour contrast and think, we're talking orange and cerise, but it's about the amount of light that surface reflects back into its environment. And that enables people to see clearly and make sense of their environment. So every surface has an LRV, a light reflectance value, and at an extreme, white would be 100 and black would be 0. And to achieve tonal contrast, so people can make sense of their environment, we need 30-degree differential between those two. So if you go to any fabric supply, like Panaz, or any wall covering company, down floor carpets, they have LRVs for all their floors, and also vinyls as well, they'll be able to do the same. You can then make sure you know what the LRV is. Now, there's two ways that can work. So when you're trying to sort of highlight something in an environment, you want the contrast. So it might be a door handle against a door. It might be the door itself against the door frame. It might be, and this is a part of building regs, the floor against the skirting. And you need those 30 degrees between those two. So that's all your decorating finishes. But there are instances where you want to make sure you minimise it. So here, courtesy of this stage, is a beautiful example of what I would not put in a care home. So you've got the two floors, which are probably they're different, but they're quite similar tonally, I'd suggest. But then you've got a black strip. So that is a nightmare for somebody definitely living with dementia, but somebody just even living with poor sight, because another thing you suffer from as you get older in terms of sight issues is depth perception. So I don't see in 3D anymore, I just see in 2D. So whilst I look at that strip and I know it's not a step, I have to sort of slide my foot across it because it might be a step, because I can't make that sense. So we'll often do flooring schemes, and I'll put the floors on the schedule and the drawing, and then I'll specify a lighter strip that is similar in tone, because then it doesn't stand out. And most shops you go into, building societies, banks, they have a black barrier matting in the middle of a lighter floor, and a lot of older people don't like going into those environments because they don't know whether it's a step or not, or even some people with dementia might think it's a hole. So for me, tonal contrast, where you don't want it to be noticed, it all needs to be the same. So flooring all uniform, the same LRV ideally. But when you do want people to see things, furniture against the wall, door handles, light switches, all of those things, tonal contrast. Look at your LRVs. That's the easiest way you can make an environment more supportive to people. And as I say, it's not just people living with dementia; it's people with aging eyes, and that's going to happen to most of us, I'm afraid. So, time for questions. Does anyone have a question for any of the panel? Oh, I think we need a microphone to this lady. They've been working so hard all day, the mics. So it's this lady over here.
Thanks so much. The top tips are really great. I just wanted, while you were talking about the LRVs, if you could touch a little bit on patterns as well. So if you've got some top tips for patterns.
Yeah, I think pattern. I think a lot of designers can be too scared of using pattern, actually. And I think if a pattern's on a floor and it's high contrast, then I would avoid using it. So a pattern that's, again, the background is like, this is a little bit too patterny. This herringbone would be a bit too strong. But their down floor do a much softer one, where the difference between the two weaves is actually very, very minimal. So that's just, I'd comfortably use that. Pattern in terms of interiors, I do use, because I think there's an element of you need some stimulation in an environment. You don't want it to be completely neutral. But also, if you've got a resident who has an issue with pattern, what we've done before is we've had cushions that are plain on one side and patterned on the other. So that's an easy way to introduce pattern into the scheme without committing to too much. But I also think pattern. I avoid geometrics. I think more botanical patterns that are relatable, that sort of don't age too much either. I think they're easier to live with. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, that's everything. I think thanks very much for coming and to the last session, I think. So thanks for making it this far.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.